Hello, and thank you for joining me. I'm coming to you from the traditional territory of the signatories to Treaty 7, and I'd like to, of course, acknowledge the Métis people who share a very deep connection with this land. As I speak to you today, 107 wildfires are burning across Alberta. Families are making very tough decisions about what to bring with them as they load up their cars and drive away from their homes. Others are being told to wait and to watch and hoping for the best. At least 20 families have lost their homes. Our hearts go out to you and to those families in Fox Lake First Nation. More than 24,500 Albertans are actually under evacuation orders and have been displaced. Now, I want to speak directly to those folks first. I know how frightening it must be to leave your home without knowing when you can return or what your community will look like when you do. But as much as we can, I want you to know that we will all work to make this easier for you. Whether you need support for your daily living, whether you need comprehensive information, whether you need health supports or childcare, we will do everything we can to make sure your government has your back. Meanwhile, we also know many folks have been evacuated to other small communities. So we will be their advocate to ensure that even as they step up to help those who have been evacuated, they will have a partner in government to help make this work. Overall, we're going to need constant communication updates. We're going to need a full range of support for those impacted, including financial assistance and mental health support. I also want to formally extend my offer to the Premier and to fellow members of the Emergency Cabinet Committee that I join their meetings as they work through this difficult situation. I'm willing to provide any insights from past experiences that might be helpful in this situation. In closing, to all those impacted by these fires, I want to say that Alberta has your back. Across the province, regular Albertans are stepping up, opening their homes and their hearts. In the coming days, I know we'll see an outpouring of generosity and support as the province pulls together to stand strong, to support one another. And I want to take a moment now to thank the hundreds of Alberta firefighters who are working around the clock to contain these fires and keep Albertans safe. You're doing everything in your power to save lives, save homes, and protect our environment from disaster and devastation. So thank you. And I also want to thank the firefighters from Ontario and from Quebec. This is what makes us proud to be Canadian. Neighbors helping neighbors. And within our provincial borders and all across this country. Now, we've been here before. When the wildfires of 2016 devastated Fort McMurray, for instance, we showed the world what it means to be an Albertan. We showed the world that even under extreme pressure, in extreme danger, Albertans look out for one another. That was true then, and it's true today. Albertans are resilient, we're tough, and we're kind. And we'll get through this together. So please, be safe. Respect the fire bans and the road closures. Pay attention to emergency alerts. Be prepared. Look out for one another. Nothing is more important. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions folks here might have.
We're going to start now with questions in the room. For those of you in the room, if you could just come on back here behind the microphone. When you ask your question, please introduce yourself and your media outlet. For those of you on the phone or on Zoom, please use the *9 on your phone or the raise hand function. Go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Notley. Scott Dibble, CBC Calgary. The government says you are being kept informed of the situation. Can you just give us a sense of how that's working out from your perspective?
Well, we will actually be having our first briefing in about 45 minutes. So we'll let you know then. But we're certainly looking forward to getting information from officials this afternoon.
There was a news release that was issued by AUP earlier today expressing concerns about the budget cuts that Alberta Wildfire has experienced in years past. Do you have any information that those reductions have played any role in the situation today?
You know, we don't. And I do expect that after the fact, there will be an opportunity to review our state of readiness leading up to this, as well as how things work going forward. But right now, we're in an emergency, and our priority has to be to keep people safe. And that really is what I think we need to focus on as much as we possibly can.
Hey, Tim Brooke with CTV. I'm sure the people who are evacuated right now couldn't care less about politics, but I want to know if you were premier right now, would you have brought in a public or a local state of emergency, a provincial state of emergency rather, and accepted a little bit more help that the federal government is offering?
Well, I mean, I don't know where that's a whole bunch different from what we'll likely see today, but I do believe that this is absolutely a classic case where declaring a provincial state of emergency is very important to help with the coordination. We know municipal leaders all across this province that are being impacted there's a tremendous amount of pressure on the resources they have, and there is a great deal of overall coordination that I think the province can offer. So I think that declaring a provincial state of emergency is absolutely the appropriate thing to do, and working very closely with the federal government and getting as many resources from them as we can is also a critically important tool that we have at our disposal.
And as you mentioned, when you were a leader, you went through something similar to this, maybe on a larger scale. If you do talk to Danielle Smith, is there advice that you'll pass on to her? Is there something that you think she should know?
You know, what we did as we wrestled with the many pressures that came as a result of a city of 80,000 or more being evacuated in 12 hours was we tried to put ourselves in the position of the folks who were being evacuated. We tried to put ourselves in the position of the people who'd left their homes. And then we said, if I was that person, what would I need in order to help make this a little bit easier? And so we worked backward from that position. And that's where we came to the conclusion that we needed to give them supports for the emergent pressures that would impact their daily living when they're no longer in their jobs and they're no longer in their houses. We needed to make sure that they had all the information possible, that it was given to them on every possible different channel, so they knew what was happening. And we knew that we needed to make sure that there were comprehensive health and mental health supports made available to them. Subsequently, there were other things that they needed to, but at this point in the process, those were the things that were really important, along, of course, with doing everything that we could to support our incredible firefighters and to help them consolidate their efforts on getting that fire under control.
Helen Pike, CBC. Sorry to bring it back to politics, but what does this state of emergency mean for the NDP's campaign? Is it a full stop? Is it a pause in a certain way? What's the policy or way forward for the NDP right now?
Well, you know, we'll have to see what this looks like day to day, but certainly today we'll be reaching out to the candidates and the campaigns that are impacted by the evacuation orders, and we'll be talking to them about suspending their campaign activity during the evacuation period, at least for the time being. So, and then we'll watch it on a day-to-day basis. But that's certainly something that we will be doing with the, I think it's at this point 7 campaigns that would be impacted by the fires right now.
And have you already spoken with Premier Smith, or how open are those lines of communication at this time?
Well, certainly we've reached out to her office to offer a phone call, to offer some advice, and as well as I've said, I think this may well be a very unique situation, having this kind of provincial emergency in the middle of a campaign, and therefore I think you know, we are quite sincere in our offer to participate in the emergency planning committee. I think that we have experience and advice that we can offer, and I think it helps depoliticize what should be a laser focus on public safety.
We're going to go now to questions over Zoom. We'll begin with Graham Thompson. Graham, please unmute.
I asked the Premier, because she was speaking as a Premier today, about potentially putting a pause on the campaign or delaying Election Day. I know that the Elections Act of Alberta allows the Chief Electoral Officer to go to court and delay or postpone Election Day in ridings, one or more ridings. Is that something that you would look at or be in favor of right now, or is it too early to say, like the Premier said, that that might be an issue down the road, but would you look at wanting to delay the elections in ridings, or at least those that are affected?
Well, you know, I do think that it's a little too soon to say right now, Graham. I think obviously we want to make sure that every Albertan can participate in this election. And so if we're still in this position, you know, further down the road, we might have to have that conversation. But at the same time, right now, I think our primary focus should be public safety, getting these fires under control, and getting folks back into their communities. And let's hope that we can. That we're able to see that we've made progress on that and succeeded on that well before we get close to voting day.
Graham, do you have a follow-up?
You mentioned, oh yeah, absolutely. You mentioned suspending election campaigning in the 7 ridings. But what happens in the rest of the province? Is it just then business as usual the next 3 weeks on your campaign? Like, does this affect your campaigning in the rest of the province?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, no, we're going to continue to make our case to Albertans. Obviously, I'm going to be taking time to get as many briefings as I can, perhaps to have an opportunity to take more time to reach out to leaders in the impacted community, to connect with folks who have been you know, victim or who've had to evacuate. So we'll be doing that, and obviously in the absence of the fire, we wouldn't have been doing that. But I think that you know, we are still in an election campaign, and I think that we need to continue to speak to folks about that at the same time. So we'll be doing both.
We're just going to go back to a question here in the room.
Water break?
I'm good, thanks.
Again, Scott Dipple from CBC Calgary. Just based on your experience, let's say, with the Fort McMurray fire, is there a point after which, you know, when people leave their home suddenly, you know, throw what they can into the car or truck and flee, is there a point at which how many days pass to which you would say the government should be providing financial assistance to the evacuees?
You know, I'd have to go back to refresh my memory on that, but if I recall correctly, we started talking about doing that within about 4 or 5 days, hoping to try and make sure that support was out there within about a week. But, you know, of course, at that point, we also knew that a lot of those folks were going to be out of their homes for at least a month. So I think that's a bit of a judgment call, but I think we all know that with a lot of families, we've heard many times that many Albertans don't have a lot of savings, and you know, most folks can't really afford to forego being at work, can't afford to, you know, let a month's worth of groceries go bad and then, you know, and then have to replace them, that kind of thing. So I think we'll have to, those are the kinds of things you want to think about. What does it look like when you're in your house one day and then you get a call and you're told to leave your house and take everything you can within 2 or 3 hours, and then 7 days later you're still not in your house? Hypothetically, I'm not saying that's what it's going to be. We very much hope that everyone's back within 7 days. But those are the questions you have to ask, and that's why I say you work backwards from the experience that people who are most impacted are having, and you ask the question, what would I need if I was that person? And then you develop your supports on that basis.
And a campaign question for you. Yesterday, the UCP leader mentioned that there were 3 things that she didn't want to talk about during this campaign. They weren't going to be campaign issues: the Alberta Sovereignty Act, the future of the RCMP in Alberta, and of course, Canada pension issue. Do you think those are issues for this campaign and really have to be discussed in this campaign?
Listen, when I go around and I talk to Albertans, and I've been all across this province, even in the last week, let alone in the last 3 or 4, one of the things that they are most worried about is the security of their retirement, and the fact that the UCP and Danielle Smith have both steadfastly insisted on continuing to talk about that possibility. And folks really don't want to see that. So I just don't think that Danielle Smith gets to refuse to talk about something like that. She has to either steadfastly, unequivocally commit to Albertans that she will not go ahead with these ideas, or she has to defend them and be accountable for them. We are in an election, and to do anything other than the 2 things I suggested would be to compromise the democratic rights of all Albertans on an issue that they care very deeply about.
We have time for one more question. We're going to go back to the phone to Saif Kaiser of Global News. Saif, go ahead. I just need to unmute.
There we go. I didn't realize I had to hit *6. I thought I just hit unmute. Thanks, Mike. So, Ms. Notley, I understand the Premier here still has a role to play during a natural disaster like a wildfire during an election. Despite that, it still kind of felt like she was using her platform to campaign. And I don't really understand how you at all play a role here as NDP leader during an election while there's a wildfire happening. So maybe if you can explain that. And I mean, don't you feel like it's incredibly tone deaf for you to come out and say things like the NDP will have your back and make sure you receive help and that sort of thing? It almost feels like you're turning people's homes being on fire into a partisan campaigning issue.
Well, I hope that's not how it's being perceived. What we are saying is that we will work, and I don't think I actually even said the NDP. I said we will work to make sure that the government has the backs of people. And we will work through a variety of ways. Right now, I'm leader of the official opposition. That is my job, is to advocate for people on certain matters. It's been my job for the last 4 years. It continues to be my job now. It is a very unique situation to have a government have to flip out of what is normally caretaker mode during an election in order to ensure a balanced election environment into government mode. And when you do that for the sake of a public emergency, which this is, there are very few precedents. Many people have talked about the fact that it's very rare that you have a former premier running in a campaign. It's even more rare that that former premier has experience with this kind of public emergency. So there is an opportunity for us to depoliticize this and to work together on doing everything we can to focus on public safety, ensure that the resources are corralled appropriately and to the people who need it, and make sure that it's not an election issue. And one way to do that is to bring people together to work on those solutions.
Saif, do you have a follow-up?
I do. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, Ms. Notley. Now, I can appreciate the fact you're saying you're hoping this isn't perceived as being tone deaf, and that you're hoping to work with the opposition. And I guess, if you're here saying you as NDP leader during an election have the authority and the ability to assist people, then I would like to hear exactly what you have done since those first evacuations started, since the wildfire started, what exact steps you're taking moving forward through the next several weeks. And, you talk about depoliticizing this whole thing, but at the end of the day, you're talking about people's homes burning down, and in the exact same breath, taking campaign questions from some of my colleagues there. It feels a little disrespectful.
Well, I think, listen, I'm here in front of the media, and I think I need to take the questions that come to me. So that's what happened. Questions come to me, and I'm going to answer them as well as I can. But what I will say is in my remarks, Saif, is this, that we will work to ensure that government has the backs of Albertans. As the leader of the official opposition, there is absolutely a role for me to advocate on behalf of all Albertans in that regard. The same was the case for the Leader of the Official Opposition when I was Premier and we had the fire in Fort McMurray. And we worked together on that and shared ideas around communication, for instance, during that time. So no, do I sign the order in council for X amount of money to be paid out to folks? No. But can I sit in a room and say, here's our experience, and here's my experience around how long it took to get that money out. Here's my experience in terms of what folks told us at the time they needed. And as a result of me playing that role of giving that information, not in a combative way, but in a way to provide insight and some advice, then maybe we will be successful in ensuring that folks get the help they need sooner.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you very much, everyone.